Welcome everyone to this April 20th, or as the kids would say, 420 episode of Uninterrupted, where instead of smoking the drugs, we get high on political ramblings, as our ancestors did. So, what I want to focus on a lot today is a lot of what I heard at the Pierre Poilievre rally, because Pierre Poilievre looks to be the conservative frontrunner, and it's a bit of a phenomenon sweeping the country, and I want to sort of extrapolate an article that I wrote today. Will the article come out before or after this? Who knows? Should be coming out tonight, depending on how much work I can get done in not enough hours of the day. But essentially my thesis in the article I'm working on right now, as this video is editing and uploading and blah, 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 as I'm writing between doing this, is Poilievre is like an anti-populist. He's the exact opposite of populism. And there's a lot of, the definition of populism, I start in the article, is essentially a populist is any politician who focuses on the ordinary man and not on the group of elites. So every politician ever, of all time. Because every politician tries to appeal to the ordinary person, the everyday man. You don't win elections by having, very narrow appeal. I think the line I put in the article is, you're never going to find a politician with the slogan, for the bankers, not the clients. No one's going to run on that. Now, you could say, oh, Hillary was for the elites, but she did it behind the scenes. The things at Goldman Sachs, those were behind closed doors. No one puts out at a rally, and I talked to Goldman Sachs, and we joked about how stupid you all are. Woo! No one does that, right? Everyone tries to say, I'm here for the everyday, Joe the plumber was the famous thing that John McCain had. And then Obama brought up a different plumber who supported him, right? Is this populism? Maybe. But by the dictionary definition of populism, every single politician who has ever run for office and ever will run for office is a populist. So the term is nonsensical. Now, the way that we use populism in the Canadian mainstream media, so not we, they, is, be scared, it's a right-wing person. They basically use it as a Trump slur. Oh, Pierre Poilievre's a populist. But what they mean by that, it's incredibly lazy. They essentially mean he's popular, and he has large crowds. And this is just I know, guys, brace yourself, Trump. And be scared, because Poilievre has crowds and Trump has crowds, which means, he's going to take away abortion from all your transgender gays. They won't be able to get the gays won't be able to get abortions anymore, because Pierre Poilievre has large crowds like Trump. But I guess a lot of people have sort of embraced the populist thing. A lot of PPC people are just no, I want populism. Because you've defined it as something else. You've defined populism as anti-establishment politics, and fair enough. But what really is the definition of populism? Or the modern, what is populism? And I would say populism is someone who offers up simple problems and then offers and doesn't really offer tangible solutions. So, you can make the argument that both Trump and Trudeau display some sort of populism in their rhetoric when they were campaigning. Trump would be oh, China's taking our jobs and I'm going to bring them back. That's sort of populist rhetoric from the right, right? There's a big problem of China and trade, and how we're going to do it? I'm going to do it because I love America, right? No tangible solutions. You just kind of have to try to trust that Trump will do it. And you could make the argument that, yeah, Trump did do it by X, Y, and Z, and, Trump did bring back the manufacturing sector, but he didn't do it like Justin Trudeau. So Justin Trudeau, we should talk about left-wing populism, is we're going to grow the economy from the heart outwards. Right? We have a problem, it's not fair, Stephen Harper's very bad. I'm going to fix it by growing the economy from the heart outwards. That's left-wing populism. Right? There's a problem, right? You feel like the economy isn't for you. I've oversimplified it, and I'm offering you a solution that isn't really a solution. I'm offering you an identity-based solution, right? My personality will fix this. That's populism, right? Is essentially, there's this big, scary problem, and I'm going to fix it with the skin of my teeth and my gusto or pizzazz, right? Now, you might rightly point out, if populism is bad, why do we never talk about left-wing populism, right? Because under the different dictionary definition of populism, right, it's the people versus the elites. Every single NDP campaign ever is a far-left populist nonsense, right? Jagmeet Singh, he's always on there we're going to tax the rich and the billionaires and the millionaires. People aren't paying their fair share. Hi, Bernie Sanders and AOC, let's play Among Us together on the interwebs, right? All of it is, by the definition, populist nonsense. But to be fair to Jagmeet, which we should never do, but we are going to do anyway, Everyone's a populist by the dictionary definition. So you have Jagmeet, who's like an actual hard left populist, right? Because all the problems can be put on the billionaires. If we just tax them at an infinity percent, right, all our problems go away. Right? So I would say populism is people offering non-solutions or identity-based solutions to complicated, issues that really touch on the average person, right? Things are unfair, I'm going to fix them by being me. And people on the left and right do this. And this is sort of populist rhetoric. Talking about things that you know you can never solve, but rile people up. That's essentially populism, to be a fair definition. And that can go both ways. And some people like a bit more populist stuff, some people don't. And to an extent, every population is at least 1% populist in some way, even under my definition. But I see Pierre Poilievre in the rally I saw last night. It's the antithesis of populism. He is popular, but being popular doesn't mean you are a populist. Pierre Poilievre, as I said, has a pretty remarkable political talent to explain complicated issues and make people listen. I've always said, okay, Pierre Poilievre spent, 5 minutes just explaining housing inflation and how it works, the intricacies of it, and then spent another 5 minutes offering up a multi-layered solution to it. This is the exact opposite of what populism is. And you hear people Pierre's extremist rhetoric. His extremist rhetoric is inflation's out of control. Here's how I would cap inflation. He is very right. Inflation's not caused by Vladimir Putin. Inflation's primarily caused by printing money. Canada had an inflation problem before COVID. Our solution to everything from 2015 onwards was, what's the problem? Print money. Is there a problem? Oh, there is no problem. How do we solve the no problem? Print money. My mom's coming over for dinner. Print money. Oh, we charity, just print money. Print money, woo. And then COVID hit, and then the solution to everything was print money like we've just snorted a bunch of cocaine and we have to print a bunch of money. It's just a line of, coked up bankers printing money. That's just what the COVID response has been. So, of course, when you print money, and Poilievre has a skill that no one else in politics has, to explain, here's the problem. It's people printing money like this, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And is he sometimes a bit charming and engagingly? Does it? Yes. Does he sometimes borrow some standard meme-ish conservative jokes? Yeah, he made the standard conservative joke of, it was so cold in Saskatchewan I saw liberals with their hands in their own pockets. Yeah, okay. Classic. But decent for a politician. So he has some skill for political theater. You remember him with the weed scandal documents, with the redacted black stuff. But his actual superpower is he can make people across the, I don't want to say political spectrum, but across the age spectrum, someone from Gen Z to a boomer, a Zoomer to a boomer, can listen to Pierre Poilievre talk about a specific problem like housing costs and inflation for 5 minutes and be mentally engaged. There is no other politician in the country that you would ever sit down and watch them talk about this issue for 5 minutes unless I physically had a gun to your head telling you must do it. There's no other politician you sit down willingly and do that to. But Pierre has an ability to explain specific issues, and then not only that, but he then went through actual tangible solutions to them. Now, to be balanced here on Pierre's criticism, I'd say there's some times where he got a bit okay, I think you're being a bit overly, let's say, populist on some issues that I disagree with. I don't, when he talked about banning foreign oil and only using Canadian oil, I don't think that's the solution. I think, I'm all in favor of Canadian oil and gas, but open up Canadian oil and gas and let it beat let the domestic oil capacity go, right? It will bring down the cost of oil. We won't need to import millions of barrels from Saudi Arabia or wherever. Now, we still will import some foreign oil, but you don't want to put a ban on foreign oil because that would just increase the prices, because then you need to buy domestically, so domestic oil producers can increase the prices because they won't face foreign competition. And then it also incentivizes Saudi Arabia to maybe put an embargo on Canadian oil so we can't sell ours abroad as easily. It's just protectionism. Open up Canadian oil capacity and let it flood the market, right? So is Poilievre a bit populisty when he says, you know what, it's going to be only Canadian oil? That's sort of a emotional appeal to the base? Sure. Right, and if we're going to say populism is emotional appeals instead of intellectual appeals, okay, That was one thing. But, that was one aspect of a multifaceted approach he had to a specific problem. So that's like, that you've never seen a populist get up and say, all right, guys, here's the problem. It's housing inflation. Here's how it's created. Bankers printing money. You have regulators in the municipal sense. You have regulators in the provincial sense. Here's how we're going to fix it, right? We're going to deregulate the Infrastructure Bank of Canada. Infrastructure funding dollars will be tied to directly how many houses you build. So in order to get more money, you're going to have to do this, right? And then we're going to stop printing money like a bunch of coked up bankers. Daniel's words, not Pierre's, right? He gave a 3-point and then expanded on those 3 points. That's what politicians are trained to never do. Politicians are trained to never explain solutions. Never. You'll notice Pierre's incredibly different than politicians, and incredibly different than a populist politician, because he's providing intellectual appeals to people. And this might be why he's so popular, and this might explain the similar Trump-esque phenomenons, but in an inverted way. Trump gained popularity in large part because we kind of had seen behind the curtain, and we've seen how politicians are very robotic. Right? No one would ever watch Hillary Clinton do 30 minutes of stand-up comedy. All right? I am Hillary and I am great. The election was stolen from me. Right? You plug the Hillbot 3000 in there and she goes around just like, being the worst. Whereas Trump is a real human being, and he did things that we were not used to politicians seeing, and he being popular in some part because of that. It's the same thing with Pierre, but a completely different type of phenomenon. Whereas Pierre is a type of politician who you've never seen politicians actually treat you like you're above the age of 15 years old, explain something to you like an adult, and then give you a solution thinking that you're an intelligent, capable adult understanding what the solution could be. So it's different, and I think that's why a lot of people are latching onto it. Also, inflation's gone running amok, and Poilievre has been ranting about inflation for years. So you can sense from Poilievre, Poilievre is legitimately a nerd. Okay? He's legitimately cares about inflation. You can tell in university he was part of some sort of conservative club that was talking about money printing and whatever, and was mad at Pierre Elliott Trudeau for whatever nonsense he was doing. Or you can tell he actually cares about and understands this issue. But it's more than that. He treats you like an adult. These aren't, standard clipped we have to make, right? Because most politicians, they get staffers, right? So another people that we should just all deport is just all the staffers and volunteers inside whatever party. Because staffers, conservative staffers will get in and be like, remember, whoever they're talking to, remember Patrick or Jean Charest, people are stupid. Everyone is stupid but us. Well, political staffers are all very dumb. But they project that onto the general population. Everyone's dumb, remember? They're just dumb people. So they only have 20 seconds, and it has to be flashy. So you get the politicians say, this will go up, and this will go down. Justin Trudeau bad, and I am good. Or conservatives bad, and I am good. Da-da-da-da-da. Graphic. Vote. Slogan. Right? Whereas Poilievre is doing kind of the exact opposite of this. Is going in-depth into issues, explaining, and then offering tangible solutions. This is very, very new for a politician. You very rarely see this. If you want to say this is more I guess it's libertarian also, but the Ron Paul type stuff back in the day, where Ron Paul would go on and rant for a while about the Federal Reserve, and he created such a hardcore following because he'd be like, the problem is we're printing money and the gold standard and brah, and everyone would be like, oh, okay, I get it, I'm on his side, and let's go with that. Whereas Poilievre is a bit more, I'd say balanced in the sense that he has some Ron Paulian, sound money, gold standard, let Bitcoin compete, free markets, but he's less purely libertarian on things. And I mean this, that Poilievre's style gets into more different and diverse areas than Ron Paul's, which is sort of very, focused libertarian rantings, which I love, right? Rant at me all day, baby. So Poilievre is very, very different in the sense that he can hit all these different issues, and not only does he hit them, but he treats you like an adult when you do it, which is very, very different. And it's also the exact opposite I said than populism, because populism is pure emotional appeal. Poilievre could get, and a Poilievre government's going to stop it because I'm going to own the libs. And there are a bunch of libs, and I'm going to pwn all the libs. And you go, okay, whatever. Like, that's a bit of the Trumpian rally stuff, is like, Trump, you make fun of Rosie O'Donnell, he'll make fun of Nancy Pelosi, this governor of California, oh, he's so terrible. Isn't he just the worst, right? That's why we need a wall, such a big wall, a great wall, a grand wall. There's a lot of emotional appeal. And you could say, Trump got things done in his own Trumpy way, but his rallies and what Trump promises to you is very emotionally focused, whereas Poilievre is like, all right, guys, put on your glasses, we're going in, I got a spreadsheet here. It's very, very different. Very, very different. But the media is trying to scaremonger with the populist thing, essentially meaning, hey, he's popular and he draws crowds, just like Donald Trump, to make your most histrionic aunt afraid of him, which doesn't take much. Now, Poilievre isn't just housing inflation, and we should go into, what causes inflation a bit, because Poilievre is right? It's money printing causes inflation, and regulations, and, we call everything protected, and you can never get anything built because you need the approval of this and that and the city council, and there's just too much red tape to building new houses. And housing is a supply and demand problem. Like, it was interesting to see Chrysler Freeland, blame high housing prices on, increased immigration. Now, increased immigration and an influx of immigrants will drive up the housing market if you are ridiculous, let's say, if you're Justin Trudeau. There have been cities like, Dallas and Texas that were able to have massive influxes of immigration during parts of their history, but the housing market remained pretty stable. That's because in Texas, you can just buy land and build houses on it. So the supply was able to keep track with the demand, which means housing prices didn't inflate. In Canada, we don't increase the supply. So once you increase the sort of base, or the people who need houses, and you don't increase the supply, well, of course, it's going to drive housing prices up. But the real problem is not immigrants. The real problem is we're not building houses. If we were to deregulate the Canadian housing market and people could just build houses, and developers weren't harassed by 80,000 different federal and provincial agencies and municipal agencies before they built something for such insane costs, well, then the average price of a Canadian home wouldn't be $800,000. It would be like $400,000 or $500,000. That and the money printing, right? So these problems can be solved. Another issue that came up last night at the rally is Poilievre did a good job of talking about Bill C-11. So this is a internet censorship bill, and it's good to see Conservative Party focus more on this. Bill C-11, it's the new version of Bill C-10, and it is really, really disturbing. It was good to see Poilievre take the position of essentially, hey, this is, it would have the government control what you see, and, he went into the flaws of what is Canadian content, what's not. But listen, I'll explain the dangers of C-10 for you here. I am an internet rambly person. I'm a Canadian internet rambly person. I cover a lot of Canadian politics. One would think I should be really happy with the government wanting to push more Canadian content on you, right? The example I've given is you're in Canada and the CRTC wants you to see Canadian content. So you type in Ben Shapiro and they go, did you mean Canadian rambly Jew? Daniel Boardman? He's fast-talking Canadian Jew. You watch him instead now. However, I'm not naive enough to think that the government of Canada would create a new program that would funnel people to my YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, National Telegraph, wherever you're watching this, right? I don't think, and no one else at the National Telegraph thinks, that the new Bill C-11 laws would funnel you right here where you are now. It's just not going to happen, right? There's the problem of what defines Canadian content, and if the CBC rips off a CNN story about Russia that has nothing to do with Canada, that's Canadian content. But a lot of Canadian-made things just are not, right? I'm not naive. I know me, a Canadian in Canada, talking about Canadian content and Canadian politics. I know it's not going to count as Canadian content because I'm not saying, listen, I say the reason why inflation goes up is because of money printing and not because of transphobia, right? I'm sorry, but I'm just going to tell you that. And I understand that because I think inflation's tied to money printing and not to transphobia, that means I'm not going to be considered Canadian content. If I got up here and said, okay, guys, the real budget needs to be built from the heart out, diversity is our strength, let's make sure we turn all the neighbors' Muslims into transgender, 2+ people, great. right? Then this is Canadian content, CRTC, I get a YouTube bump. But I know it's not going to do that. And I don't want that to happen. There's other problems too, where this is sort of following an Australian law. What is sort of the poison pill for a lot of media organizations, and we've had a lot of conversations about this at the National Telegraph, and we've decided not to get on board for ethical reasons, and we'll have to suffer the consequences, and we'll figure out a way around it. But the real danger for small outlets like the National Telegraph and like me is the incentive actually is probably to bring you on board to the program. What C11 wants to do is enable, basically the government would force Google and Facebook to pay us a share of the advertising revenue that they get, and to dedicate some funds to media outlets, and they should give us money. Google and Facebook are stealing from you. In the actual fact, the only reason why businesses like news media survive now is because of Google and Facebook. Like, you search through Google and other search engines, and Facebook is a great way to disseminate news content. So Facebook does its job by existing for news media, but the government's trying to pretend, it's not fair, they're stealing your content by putting it out there for free. It's like, yeah, but you're posting on a free network, and then people come back and they're supposed to click on your articles, and then because they click on your articles, they go to your site and you get ad revenue. And again, that's how we make a lot of our money. What C11 promises to do, however, is it puts everyone on a level playing field. So if we get on C11 and we get government certified and whatever, our content legally must be weighted the exact same as CBC's content or Global's content. And that sounds pretty appealing because you want to be treated better in a Canadian algorithm. And that's sort of where the delta comes. So yes, you get the money from Google and Facebook, which will then be reimbursed by the federal government. Or if they have us under Google and Facebook, they can regulate the media secondhand. So it's not like they don't get into the First Amendment. I know it's not in Canada, but free speech, government interfering in free speech. Oh, we're not interfering in free speech. We're just trying to curb disinformation on social media, and social media then polices the contents on them. So this is sort of the poison pill, where you would be forced as a news organization to get on the Facebook, Google government dollar, and you get the benefits of it. So you get the money, and you get treated as the same weight as the big guys, right? If you're a trusted source, you get to go to the top of the searches. You get to be promoted more, right? The people who don't do it will be downgraded. And not only that will you be downgraded, but you will, our ad revenue will shrink because, Google then needs to take the money that it's giving out to other people and give it to the trusted news organizations in Canada. So essentially, the government will force Google to take more money away from us and give it to the CBC and whatever. And if we want to stop that, well, then we have to get on the government dole and the government dime and get with the program. But you get with the program, you're then under CRTC regulations, and you say anything like, again, money printing causes inflation, not transphobia, you can then be nuked. So you're kind of under, it's the golden handcuffs problem. So for that reason, National Telegraph has decided to not get on that time. We're going to pursue, we're going to stay independent fully. No government contracts, no government getting under the thing, no being subservient to their sort of big tech, big government cabal. And we'll find ways around it, whether it's getting you, harassing you to join an email list, following us on, we're going to start a locals account, and all the different things. When C11 comes out, we're going to have a full plan to get around it. That's just some behind the scenes of what it's like to be an alternative media outlet in modern day Canada. But we're going to find a way to get around Bill C11. So Bill C11, that's not the only problem. Now, the bill I've read, it's highly nebulous. There was an interesting tweet from Pablo Rodriguez, the current Heritage Minister, the precursor to Stephen Gabilbliot, the former Heritage Minister, now the new claimant, Barbie. And he put out a tweet essentially saying a couple weeks ago that there was this controversy at the Canadian whatever awards for something, or just a stupid Canadian award ceremony, where I believe a Jewish man from Montreal won an award for making a film about a black musician. And he got up and in his acceptance speech basically said thank you and made the case that anyone can make art about anyone else. And we should have, he thought Stories about black Canadians, great. Everyone should be doing it. We should be telling more of these stories. But this was a horribly racist thing to do because only black people can tell stories about black musicians. That's the world we live in under critical race theory. And the friggin' award shot to apologize for all of this. It was a controversy. But then Pablo Rodriguez got on and retweeted basically saying, well, this is what Bill C-11 will do. It will make stuff like this illegal. It gives a legal framework to enforce the type of worldview that only black people can talk about black people. Critical race theory nonsense. Now, it's not really in the bill, but that's them letting the cat out of the bag, saying the quiet part out loud, which is what everyone's been saying, right? You give government control of the media, the CRTC control of the media, the control of the internet media, they're going to enforce critical race theory on you. It will become the law of the land, and that's exactly what they said, right? So this is another problem, and this is, again, we didn't have to be geniuses to realize that, hey, let's not get on this program under the critical race theory nonsense. We might try and partner with a couple VPNs, encourage people to get VPNs to say that you're in America, not Canada, and we'll find a way around the censorship. We'll find a way. We're not going to get on board. But again, this is just a nonsense of Bill C-11 and Canadian media censorship and all that. So it's good to see the Conservatives talk about it again. They defeated Bill C-10 kind of by talking about it, but then it just came back as Bill C-11, and the Conservative Party still hasn't gotten all its ducks in a row and really going after it. It was nice to see Poilievre bring it up at his rallies, and it's good that it looks like it's going to be a bit of a talking point on his freedom stuff, like freedom of speech. He's going to focus on C-11. That'd be good. It'd be good if, Leslie Lewis gets on it too. It'd be good if Jean Charest and Patrick Brown do it as well. Jean Charest, Patrick Brown, I will cover you if you say good things. If you say good things and you support free speech. Patrick Brown currently more interested in supporting the Tamil Tigers, but Patrick, you do you, not surprised. But if you decide to stop enabling terrorist groups and start talking about Canadian issues, I'll cover that. Still going to cover the fact that you're trying to court the Tamil Tigers, but, maybe you can do some good things after you're done trying to legitimize a terrorist organization. All right, this brings us to the last part of the day. It's the worst of the CBC for April 20th, 2022, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. And I will say last night's The National was news. It was news. It was the best hour of CBC news I have ever seen. Spoiler alert, Rosemary Barden scale, it's getting a 1. It's getting a 1. This was an actual news program. Yes, there was still stuff, and it was still the narrative and all this and bias, but none of it was batshit insane. I'm going to nitpick here. They did a segment on the Florida judge repealing the mask mandates on planes, and they just did some people were confused. Now, they did also interview some people saying, great, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, don't wear a mask. Time to be over with it. And they had one person say, I'm kind of confused. What do I do? Do I wear a mask or not wear a mask? And they're like, some people are confused. But they didn't call Florida alt-right. They actually presented both sides, willingly or unwittingly. The beginning Ukraine coverage, it's what we've been saying they should be doing the entire time. It actually was somewhat news coverage. Andrew Chang started by saying, here's a map. We're about to go into the Donbass region, which is here, and the goal of Russia is to create a land bridge to annex Crimea over here, and they showed you on the map. So you're like, oh, this is a logistical point of this war. Oh, here's this importance. Here's where our reporter were. And then, what's-her-face, Erin, the current CBC reporter lady in there, she usually does a terrible, starving dog voice, in Ukraine, there are lots of sad puppies and some lady playing a piano. But they're actually, the city they're in, was under artillery barrage, and they actually showed, here, the sound of Russian missiles going overhead. So I kind of, perked her up, and she started, doing the news in a real person voice, which was a good change of pace. So the Ukraine stuff, they went back at the end to doing a bit of sob stories, but they did what I said they should do before. Educate people on, what's actually happening. Listen, if you want to invest in the National Telegraph, I would love if we had reporters in Ukraine so I could actually show you every day and do a real news thing and get into an actual studio and show you graphics and actually go into, okay, here's what you need to know about the war. X, Y, Z, maps, battalions, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Hey, Daniel's cousin who blah, 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 on the ground, or TNT reporter, what's going on? Hey, X, Y, and Z, we were doing whatever. You see this, or Ukrainian official saying this, and that. And then at the end of the thing, you can have a humanitarian story about like this blind grandmother plays the piano for refugees or whatever, right? You can do that at the end. But they actually did lead with some hard news, so good for them there. There was a 10-minute segment by Anne-Marie Tremonti on survivor of domestic abuse or intimate partner violence. I thought it was a good story. I like when women are strong enough to come forward to confront these things. I think it's actually really helpful. So they get full marks on that. They did a story on Moderna coming up with a new vaccine that they say will attack some of the variants, but they actually kind of fact-checked it. They talked about how it was only a study on 300 people. How it was only they talked about the faults in the study. They presented a counter narrative to Moderna on the CBC. Come on, guys! CBC's The National on April 19th was an actual news program. Yes, they had your standard left-wing bias and slants, but you know me, I hate the CBC. When it's propaganda that drives me crazy, it's propaganda and it drives me crazy. I'll let you know about it. But last night, it was a real news program, 1 out of 10 on the Rosemary Barton scale. A international record, an actual news program from the CBC. So I doubt that will be the case tomorrow. Tomorrow I will probably be ranting and raving at the end of that day's Uninterrupted. But today, hey, real news. Who knew? See you tomorrow.